What up? What up? What up?
Hey, nobody. Hey, y'all.
Oh man, you know. Oh look, there's one.
There's one. Hey. What up, Solo?
Oh man,
Still one.
we be
Uh-oh.
having so much. The thing is, we be having these intense conversations, and then it's like, oh, it's time to go
We're
live.
like, hi, guys.
Oh
Still
man,
one. Usually it's at least four by now. Hey,
and it's Erica.
all three of Oh, David. What's up? What's up?
What's up, Erica? What's up, David?
What's going on? I think maybe was Jackie doing something? Because I feel like in StreamYard it had her. I saw her name. Oh,
Hey,
okay.
Denzel.
Hey, Denzel, look, we repping the set.
Y'all can't see the whole thing, but it's the Middle Tennessee gun, black gun. I can't even talk.
Black
What is the
gun.
word? Black
Black
gun
Gun
club.
Club. Yes, we are certainly repping. Speaking of which, we need to get our tickets for Highlander.
I know. Because that might be where I'm retreating to.
Shit. I don't even know what
Although I don't want to be in the mountains of Tennessee. I don't know.
Girl, you got a home. You can go right on to North Carolina.
Oh, that's already that's no there's no debating that.
Yeah, we'll be in Nebraska. We got our little house in Nebraska. That's some like older lady has been renting for like 50 years, first from my grandma, my mom. She's still at a Miss Powell. That's her name.
You have to say, hey, we about to join you, sis. It's about to be a compound.
Listen, there's enough space for everybody, apparently. So that's exactly what my mom was saying.
We ain't trying to be capitalist landlords. They're gonna kick you out, but you gotta let us go.
Right, exactly. We gotta we have to democratize the space.
Oh man.
What's been going on, y'all? Hello? I'm just playing. Okay, we got a little more intimate crowd today. That's okay. That's okay. The replay will always be there.
Yep.
We up to 15 now. So we just kicking it today. We really don't have we gonna, do some reading. We gonna have friend of the show, comrade of the show, Jackie Lukeman on. What up, Wolfgang? Yeah, we just gonna get it. We wanted to get some Black August content in before the month is over.
Yep.
We're still on break, but we'll have at least one more pop up
before we come back for the regular season.
What season is it? 4 or 5? 4?
It will be 4.
Crazy. That's so crazy.
It will be season 4 of LSR. But
of LSR. And then we had one season of
I thought it was 2. It was 2.
We
had one season.
Yeah, and then there was another one. But wasn't that season like 20 episodes? It was a long season.
But we also were both like, you were childless. We were both single in the world. We were both on fellowship. We were not like that was a very different time in the world.
Yeah. David said, I did a reading group with Asada yesterday. I was the old fart of the group, LOL. Being 46. David, you look good because it's hit or miss with white folks. And I did not know. I guess when we met, you were maybe around 44, 45 in person.
I was talking to 2 of my friends about like being in the age range 40. It's like 40 is absolutely not old. Like, and like I'm feeling, like in my best shape. But she was like, but also 40 is not 20. And so, like, particularly for people who are like, you want to get back out on the court, you need to play basketball with other 40-year-olds. Okay, not
right. Seriously, because this,
it's just different.
It's something. Being in academia, I feel like preserves you in a particular way because you're around so many subsequent generations of younger people. Yeah. But then, when you make particular references, then it's like, okay, I'm old.
but the thing is but like that,
Me
the
too.
making reference, like losing generational references is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter because of how fast information like turns over. So like, because like I feel like we are much more aware of generational references from our parents than
Mhm.
I think even just what is it, what's under us, Gen Z is for our generational references. And I think it's because we've lost a lot of like communal forms of consumption. Like we don't listen to the radio, we don't listen to mass produced radio in the same way. We don't necessarily watch like broadcast TV. And so it's not like those, like, I don't know, those cultural canon moments are not the same because people have such like silos of things that
Yeah.
they're interested in.
But I would say, on the other hand, it is much more accessible, right? So you have like Martin on streaming, for example, and so it's hit or miss. The other thing that happens too is that younger people will know the remix version or like a snippet
Yes.
of something from previous generations and think it's Lil Baby, but it's like that's Earth, Wind, and Fire, whatever. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so, and it's funny. I'm sure these people was having conversations about us in a similar
Oh yeah,
way.
I mean, I think every generation faces, and I don't even say it like it's anything particularly unique. I just think that the turnover is much quicker now. And so like, whereas it might have taken 15 years for people to like lose cultural reference, I feel like it'd be like 4 now. It's like, oh, you don't know what happened 5 years ago.
Listen, so much is worth forgetting anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Anyway,
speaking of cultural canon events, the
mm,
thing that we wanted to start off talking about today was the pitfalls of celebrity culture by way of thinking about the what Dave Chappelle called it, the juicy
the
smoulet.
juicy smoulet. Yeah, so you know that the Jussie Smollett documentary or whatever you want to call it just dropped on Netflix, and so we had we have thoughts, and so we thought that, so also in terms of life, instead of giving life updates, which we'll do here and there, part of the live segment will just be conversations that we actually do have in real life that are about pop culture, politics, or whatever, and just bring it here and obviously relate it to like the broader themes or whatever that we're talking about. So, Layla, what are your initial thoughts about this Jussie Smollett? So, first of all, where do you land now after seeing the documentary? I guess, where did you land before, and where do you land now after seeing it?
I mean, okay, so this is the thing that we were talking about before. Like, I absolutely did not believe Jussie Smollett. Like, I just did it.
No.
I, after having watched the documentary, I believe no one. That's kind of where I've landed. Like, literally, when I started watching, because I know people remember this, but I forgot that this man continued to wear that noose around his neck, and that the police, like, there's no conceivable way for me that I would have been out in public attacked and made it back home to the safety of my own home and remain like maybe in the same clothes, like just out of shock, but like something like that, a noose around my neck, like there is just absolutely no way. So just starting there was just like, oh, this is about to be an emotional roller coaster, I see.
So not only did he walk home or jog, I don't know what he did. It was cold and icy outside, so I imagine he walked with the noose around his neck. He sandwich. Now, that is the height of fucking incredulity for me. This was not a gourmet sandwich. This was a cold, probably nearly frozen Subway sandwich. Mind you, it's the polar vortex. And he still took the sandwich home. That was strike one. The second thing is, where did the bleach go? Do you remember when he first reported the incident? He said that they put a noose around his neck and poured bleach on him. There was not one mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, Layla, there was no mention of the bleach in the documentary. So
no, I forgot about it until you brought it up again.
So it's as if he knew that was just so utterly ridiculous that he left it out, which also, again, raises questions. Now, to your point, everybody's lying for a variety of reasons, but this man was not attacked. Like, I don't believe it at all. I do think them Nigerians were involved for sure.
Oh yeah.
The pigs were absolute lying. I believe the part of the narrative where people were talking about how like the Chicago Police Department needed or wanted a woman or whatever. Plus, who believes the cops anyway? So it was never that we don't believe Jussie because we believe the pigs. It was like, come on, my guy. Just like Dave Chappelle said, like, he had a joke where he said, the LGBTQ community was like getting mad at the Black community, like, you're not supporting him. He was like, we're supporting him by not saying
anything.
No, he's lying. Ooh, he was lying. So yes, but
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna bring in the celebrity activism part, but did you have more to say?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. The thing that I did find kind of most compelling, which they kind of it is something that they raised in the documentary, but they kind of threw it away, was the fact that the Chicago Police Department was on the immediate heels of the Laquan McDonald situation, and that because they had you can't even say butchered because they did what they always do, but because that they had such bad press from the Laquan McDonald's murder, that they needed something to make them to regain some kind of credibility in the eye.
So Musa said, I don't know, when people go through traumatic events, notoriously recall the events inaccurately. I agree, but to me, to recall the event inaccurately would be to be like, they poured bleach on me, but it was really fabric softener. Or they poured some liquid on me. That whole part of the narrative was completely left out. So like imagining whole events that happen. I mean, it's possible. Anything is possible, but I just don't don't think the man was attacked, or I don't know. I just, there was just nothing about that was believable to me. It just wasn't, especially, it's like, isn't he a writer? It's like, you are a writer or a producer or whatever. Like, you couldn't come up with anything that's even more remotely believable to Black people.
And well, apparently now those Nigerian dudes are also writers.
Maybe they helped him concoct this cockamamie story. But so part of what we wanted, or what we also are thinking about, was like, this is the pitfalls of celebrity culture, because part of it is like, he kept talking about, hey, he wanted to be an activist, he wanted to be a voice for the Black community. Instead of organizing, instead of establishing relationships with communities, instead of doing work that is actually would allow you to sort of be not a voice for, but a voice alongside the Black community, like, you want to pull this hoax. Like, so to me, that is also, it is also believable that he would make up this story for that, to draw sympathy, to then be able to speak out against homophobia and racism, which, mind you, he could have done anyway.
Which, to me, so this is the thing about the whole Black famous thing, right? Because like, Jussie Smollett wanting to be an activist is interesting to me, because you also, like, at least in the case of his sister Journey, right, you could make an argument that the types of movies, the types of roles she has chosen to portray, they tell particular kinds of stories about Black life. And like, if it is that you want your artistry to be your activism, then I think that there is something there, right, that you choose to inhabit roles that portray Black people in a particular way, that bring attention to particular issues. He wasn't even doing that. Like, Empire was the most raggedy, like, just terrible portrait. And I'm not saying that in judgment of anything. And I think I'm guilty of consuming it in part too. Taraji as Cookie is definitely like a fan favorite. But at the same time, it's like, if that's actually really something you want to do, you're not making choices like your sister was making, or maybe somebody like a Chadwick Boseman who is attempting to say, okay, well then I want to tell particular stories about Black people. So like, it's like, this is a joke. Like, and then like, and you wanted to somehow, I don't know, crossover, move out of sort of Black fame realm by doing this. This just felt like a nail in the, like, it just felt absurd.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me, like, how soon, like, Lee Daniels spoke out. And I don't know his thought process. I don't know the politics behind that, but that also is very interesting to me, because I think Lee Daniels had a few kind of publicity hits too, right? Like, so didn't Monique like notoriously call him out for various, not having her back when she was blackballed and that type of thing. So it's and we see, I feel like we continue to see these publicity stunts in various forms by these different, celebrity activists. And so I wonder, so do you think that Jussie was, it seems to me that he was involved in the making of that documentary, it was his idea to put this out to change the narrative somehow? I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I was trying to look it up after the fact, because like I didn't see that he had a producer credit, but it just doesn't feel possible that he didn't, because the way, I mean, yes, they put forth the theory, because like they tried to tell this story about how the two Nigerian dudes were like keeping quiet until they were told that Jussie had basically pinned this situation on them
in that interview.
Yeah, and then they're just ready to spill everything. The whole stuff around the I will say that this is another thing that came up for me in the documentary, which is not just about this, but we were talking about this. No, were we talking about this? But Derica was talking about this at the conference in Indianapolis. But the Ring cameras and just the amount of
tracking
video surveillance they were able to do of them walking through the city, it almost makes me want to go back to just like wearing masks and cover things up, because it's just like, damn, like they really followed them forever. I will say that final scene didn't look like no black man. It didn't look like the twins to me. It did look like a random white man, but I don't know what they were showing us. So
yeah, see, it didn't look like a white man to me. It looks, because like the pictures are notoriously distorted on these cameras. I don't know what it looked like. I don't know where that footage was from.
Yeah.
They've made a big to-do about these two witnesses that they didn't involve. And it's like, they very well could have been paid off. Like, just like that Kim Fox lady was paid off. I'm sorry, they bribed her to drop them charges. And then, they got, it was all a mess. It was all a fucking mess. And to me, I don't know what Jussie's anything was, but if he could have made like an astute calculation, like, okay, even if some stuff does hit the fan, right, the Nigerians are suspect enough that it's my word against theirs. Nobody trusts the police, especially the CPD. So again, it's my word against theirs. And so there's a calculation that he could have been engaging in, whereby it's like, at the end of the day, it'll be my word against theirs. Now, when he walked out of the courtroom talking about, I'm not suicidal and whatever, free the guys, whatever he said, that was unhinged.
It was. And like, I know I'm remembering all of the if I die in police custody stuff that was coming out after Sandra Bland, which I felt like he was trying to evoke that, but it just felt out of, like, it felt forced. And it was just like, boy, okay. Like,
nobody gonna kill you. And that's the other thing. That's also part of this whole celebrity culture thing. It's like this inflated sense. It's like, ain't nobody gonna kill you. They've already killed your reputation, or you aided in that. So it's like, it just, the whole all around. And the gag is, so this happened in what, January, or this was like November of 2019. If he would have just held on till May 2020, it's like, you could have had all of the celebrity that you wanted, because mere months later is when George Floyd popped off. So it's like, it's just funny how that happens. And then and even after this happened, he still could have weighed in. It's like, if you really wanted to be sort of a spokesperson for social justice for the Black community, you still could have weighed in, right? Irrespective. So I don't know.
Well, I agree with Erica. It was a scheme that Todd set up. It was all a scheme that Todd set up.
Who's Todd?
Candy husband Todd. It's a Real Housewives reference.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
This is all a scheme that Todd set up. Oh, yeah, man.
And the other thing, and this is my thing, and this is why I implore us, stop wanting celebrities to get involved one way or the other. Just give money. They can just redistribute their resources. I don't want them to be advocates. I don't want to know what their politics are. I don't give a fuck. And so we're seeing another after October 7th, we saw another wave of this, like such and such didn't speak out, or such and such.
Yeah.
Like, if they choose to do that of their own because they're human beings in the world, fine, but they don't have a responsibility to do that because they're celebrities. Their responsibility is as entertainers, in my perspective. They have a responsibility as human beings to speak out or not, but in terms of like thinking that, you know, them speaking out will then galvanize others, like I just don't like that model, right? I think that is not, I think that leads to things like a Jussie Smollett hoax when we have those expectations of celebrities, you know?
Yeah, I think this is for me, the point I'm about to make is a continuation of I think the conversation that we've had with Musa before when we were talking about culture workers. Like yes, like I'm not necessarily, I do think it's dangerous for us to look to celebrities for like as like our, you know, our political compass or whatever. But I also think that is something that is vitally missing, I think, from our generation. And when I say that, like, I mean like people who are tied to popular culture, who have massive audiences, who have actually like decent politics. Like, I mean, you know, thinking about Muhammad Ali's choice not to go to war. That, I mean, that was important and pivotal and critical. And yes, James Brown got his issues, but say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud, with like critical. Nina Simone, like, you know, and so like we just have so few people who have access to the masses of our people who are taking any kinds of stands. And so like I don't yes, I'm absolutely with you on the not pushing celebrity activists, but I do think that is something that we're really losing because we don't have enough celebrities who have a political compass to be a part of this sort of broader movement to push our people to the left.
Well, so a couple things. So one is that Nina Simone was connected to movement, and I think about like Aretha Franklin, right? Aretha Franklin did a lot in terms of like bailing people out of jail, providing money. And so like and of course, Paul Robeson is like the beacon, right? But to me, these people were connected to movement. They weren't simply, you know, speaking out in this abstract way. The other thing too is that I think that there is something to be said about movements, organizations developing culture workers to combat some of, you know, to combat the sort of imperialist propaganda which all of these celebrities are reproducing. And so I think that there's many ways that we have to harness culture and popular culture, right? Cabral talked about this. Everybody, many people, the Black arts movement, I think we need a revolutionary culture. We have to have it. That's how we combat alienation and distortion, obfuscation, all of those things. But as you know, that's like qualitatively different than being like, Beyonce, you have a platform, speak out.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it had no political education. And so like, I shudder to think what it is that well, we see what our politics are. Buffalo Soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, what did David say? Remember when Daruba said that said, I'm Black and I'm proud? Oh, interesting. The kitty court. Oh, well, you know.
But again, this I think is to your point about being tethered to movement because even King was pushed by the youth on his positions, right? So like, yes, being in, like you said, being in, that's the other problem, right? Because like there was like historically there was like still us living amongst us, right? Even as we got more resources and things, we were still like engaging with one another in our daily lives because we still lived in proximity to one another. We still, you know, were having, you know, we were coming across each other as teachers, as our nurses, our lawyers, our doctors, and we're just so disconnected that there is such a lack of a sense of like, what is the community that we are accountable to, and who is helping, you know, shape those kinds of ideas and positions beyond, I think, these, you know, these echo chambers of these types of podcasts, because, you know, the relationship podcast, that's the real money makers. That's the stuff that people are really talking about. And it's trash.
So this reminds me of people talk. You could think whatever you want about Mark Lamont Hill, but this reminds me of him being like a permanent staple on the Joe Budden podcast. And he be, you know, whatever, kiki and ha, but he actually he brings up Palestine, like he brings up real serious issues that particular segments of Joe Budden's audience probably wouldn't hear otherwise. And they may not still care now, but again, this is how we process information. So we might think like, we might think about things over time, or we might, be exposed to ideas that we might never have even given a second thought to. So so Ricky says, thoughts on approaching this as seeing cultural workers useful when they come from a politic and not thrust into one. How does it become effective? So this is what I'm saying, right? That culture work, first of all, culture work is different than entertainment, right? Culture work is like a conscious effort to, again, create a revolutionary culture and combat dominant propaganda. That I think that's really, really important. And knowing the difference between the two. And like I said, I have no problem with consuming, pop culture per se.
Yeah.
It's when we conflate having a platform with fittedness for leadership, and fittedness for leadership with having like a revolutionary or radical politic. Like, I think that we need to like be clear about what it is we're asking of these people, just as like we need to be clear about what it is that we're asking of ourselves. And then people are always so quick to try to press and hold celebrities accountable in ways that they do not do that for their quote unquote elected officials.
That is true.
You really want to press a motherfucker, motherfuckers whose job this actually is.
That
right?
dumb motherfucker in DC.
Exactly. Precisely. And so that is actually their job. That's actually what they're supposed to be doing. And so, but we're so caught up in the lives of, these parasocial relationships that is completely abdicated, right? Because there's no glory in that. There's no, there's no shine, there's no discourse, there's no think pieces about that.
I don't know if you've seen this particular clip, Sharice, but there's a moment on the Joe Budden podcast where Mark is basically talking about every Palestinian person that he has worked with in the media has been killed. And Joe Budden and what's the other girl's name? Melissa Ford. Like both of them, they basically like there's just like this immediate pivot to so what else can we talk about? And like it was just so telling of how politically immature, like just on a humanistic level, right? A person is telling you that everybody that I know who has done this type of work has been murdered. And you're more concerned with what does the pivot look like in the conversation rather than acknowledging the heaviness of that statement because it's not easy to laugh at. And it's this is crazy that like people are not even mature enough to be able to say like daily people are being massacred, and I don't even want to talk about it from the comfort of my couch, right? Because I don't know what it's going to mean for our audience. Like that, I still think that because of the type of people, the demographic of people who watch the Joe Budden, I think that there is something to be gained from Mark's presence there. For a range of reasons, but I don't know that I would have had the wherewithal to say I'm going to stay on a show like this with that kind of response.
Well, so to me, like I'm not really worried about those handkerchief heads. To me, it's like if there was 1 or 10 or 5 people who heard that and were like, "Damn," and then looked it up, it's who I'm worried about. I'm expecting from Joe Budden's goofy ass. Whatever. Melissa Ford is Canadian. I'm just kidding. Shout out to our Canadian subscribers. I'm just kidding. But like,
look, I was about to call her ass Corinne Steffens because all I could think about was a video.
Yeah. So Ricky said, I will say though, the crossover between celebrity and politician is very muddled today.
It is.
I call them elected influencers. Like, of course, right? Because that's just the nature of society, is that celebrity becomes the means by which people are legitimated. It's like, it's about being popular and related to that, being able to get money, as opposed to being able to be effective in terms of governance. So I absolutely agree. I mean, I agree with that. But at the very least, those are celebrities who claim to be politicians. So those are the ones that you should be pressing, right? Yeah. Those are that's actually their job. It's not a job that we're thrusting on them by virtue of having a so-called platform. Yeah, I do wonder what it means for the host to blatantly dismiss it. I get the broader audience, but yeah, I mean, I think that is their job. the function of the celebrity class, as opposed to culture workers, the function of the celebrity class is propaganda, right? It's to reproduce the system and to protect their own comfort. So I don't expect anything more of them. So they're performing exactly the role that they're supposed to perform. Now, it's up to, and we don't know the conversations that Mark is able to have with them behind the scenes to move them over time. So, but because if we believe that people can change over time and that it takes time for people to develop particular political consciousness, we don't know where Joe Budden and Melissa Ford and them other people will be a year from now by virtue of these conversations if Mark continues to bring them up. On the other hand, we don't know what the effect on Mark will be, because
it does go both ways.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I don't know. So obviously, I don't think that that's the predominant way, that I don't know that that's the predominant approach. But what I do know is that for the right wing, everything is a terrain of struggle. They are leaving nothing unseated, because that's why there's so many right wing podcasts. And so we can ill afford to cede any of this terrain as well. And so even as we have these critiques of celebrity, if we're trying to sort of penetrate that or like sort of provide a countervailing force to that, I think that we need all hands on deck, right? Do the thing that you think is correct, because there's so many terrains to struggle on. And like I said, the right wing, they don't give a fuck how puny. Like, they will wage war on fucking dog shit.
Yes.
Right. If they can construe a dog turd as woke, they're waging war on it. Period. So like that is where we are, and I think that we have to take that seriously.
And on the note of taking seriously, we can transition into our study portion for today, which is explicitly focused on Black August. So we wanted to start reading this shorter piece by Mumia. I'm going to share it 1 second.
Yeah, I'm going to drop the link to our drive again in the chat. Excuse me, because we have that piece in there. We'll also share the screen, but we have 2 readings. We got one by Mumia, and then we have one by Joe. Is it Joe Tachi?
Tachi, I think.
Tachi, both about Black August. And so let's start with Mumia. So he starts with this quote from Huey P. Newton. Huey said, "George Jackson was my hero. He set a standard for prisoners, for political prisoners, for people. He showed the love, the strength, the revolutionary fervor that's characteristic of any soldier for the people. He inspired prisoners, whom I later encountered, to put his ideas into practice, and so his spirit became a living thing." So Mumia starts this piece saying, "August is both historic and contemporary African-American history, is a month of meaning. It is a month of repression."
And then so we can go and then he lists a series of dates. So August 1619, the first group of Black laborers called indentured servants landed at Jamestown, Virginia. August 25th, 1967, classified FBI memos went out to all bureaus nationwide with plans to, quote, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize Black liberation movement groups. In August of 68, the Newark, New Jersey Black Panther Party office was firebombed. On August 25th of 68, the Los Angeles Black Panther Party members Steve Bartholomew, Robert Lawrence, and Tommy Lewis were murdered by the LAPD at a gas station. On August 15th, the following year, 69, Sylvester Bell, San Diego Black Panther Party member, was murdered by the U.S. organization. And then on August 21st of 1971, Black Panther Party Field Marshal George L. Jackson was assassinated at San Quentin Prison in California. 3 guards and 2 inmate turncoats were killed and 3 were wounded.
It is also a month of radical resistance. On August 27th, 1831, Nat Turner's rebellion rocked Southampton County, Virginia, and the entire South when slaves rose up and slew their white masters. On August 30th, 1856, John Brown led an anti-slavery raid on a group of Missourians at Osawatomie, Kansas. On August 7, 1970, Jonathan Jackson, younger brother of Field Marshal George Jackson, raided the Marin County Courthouse in California, arming and freeing 3 Black prisoners and taking the judge, prosecutor, and several jurors hostage. All except 1 prisoner were killed by police fire that perforated the escape vehicle. John was 17. And go ahead.
And in an instance of resistance and repression, August 8th, 1978, after a 15-month armed police standoff with the Philadelphia-based naturalist MOVE organization, the police raided the MOVE headquarters, killing one of their own police in crossfire and charged 9 MOVE people with murder. The MOVE 9 in prisons across Pennsylvania are serving up to 100 years each.
August, a month of injustice and divine justice, of repression and righteous rebellion, of individual and collective effort to free the slaves and break the chains that bind us. August saw slaves and the grandsons of slaves strike out for their God-given rights of freedom, as well as the awesome price, the ultimate price, always paid by those who dare oppose the slave master's will. Like their spiritual grandfather, the blessed rebel Nat Turner, those who have opposed massa in the land of unfreedom have met murder by the state. George and Jonathan Jackson, James McLean, William Christmas, Bobby Hutton, Steve Bartholomew, Robert Lawrence, Tommy Lewis, Sylvester Bell, and all suffered the fate of Nat Turner, of the slave daring to fight the slave master for his freedom.
Rochelle McGee, for the crime of surviving the Marin County Courthouse Massacre, has been consigned to a life in California slave coffins, modern-day dungeons called adjustment centers, where he has languished since August 1970. He is a political prisoner guilty of the unpardonable sin of insurrection. And though not executed by hanging like his ancestor Nat Turner, or executed by firing squad like his co-rebels, he endures a cruel living death in the bowels of Babylon. Their sacrifice, their despair, their determination, and their blood has painted the month black for all time. Let their revolutionary sacrifice not be forgotten nor taken in vain. From Death Row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
So what I appreciate about this piece is the dialectic, right? So it's not just radicalism and resistance, it's also repression, because repression is the basis for why it is that we develop a radical and revolutionary consciousness. And I think that that's something that we need to keep top of mind. And so to me, this is a refutation of like the soft-lived narrative or the Black folks who are like, we need to sit this one out. I just saw Jamel Hill post something about this dumbass shit on Threads, like, Black, because there was a comment about how in the DC protests, it was primarily white people. And somebody said, it's interesting how, all of these protesters are white. Black people must be okay with what's going on or something. And Jamel Hill was like, remember, we said that we're sitting this out. White people need to put some skin in the game. And it's like, it's as if the George Floyd uprisings weren't multicultural as fuck. Like,
not even go back before that. The Black Lives Matter, the stuff, like not Ferguson itself, but but because Ferguson was a particular community, but many of the Black Lives Matter protests that erupted, like in that immediate Trayvon Martin era to Mike Brown, like that, what was his name, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, like that, there was a series of protests that were occurring, even in North Carolina. But the Moral Mondays movement was predominantly middle-aged white people in North Carolina, particularly the people who were getting arrested, right? But even this idea that sitting this out does what? Like, are people coming for us any less? Is the quality of our lives being improved any? Like, and not even on some like just rest type shit. It's not. We're literally being targeted in every way, shape, fashion, or form. Whether it's basic shit like SNAP benefits being reduced, and not being able to have access to medical care, to being scooped up on the street for just breathing and existing. This sitting shit out is so fucking ridiculous. Like, I don't even know what to say.
That is the primary, that is the supreme fallacy of Black people, to think that at any point we could rest, to think that at any point the state is ever on our side, even if they slightly lessen the boot on our neck, the boot is still there. So there is no time that we have the right to rest or to take a step back until we're free. Because as every single thing that happens to other group, if we believe our own analysis, even the anti-Blackness folks, if you believe this idea that Black people are the most oppressed people, then you know that every form of oppression is a laboratory to be tested on, to then be used on Black folks, or that all of the oppression of Black folks is a laboratory to be used on other people. So what happening in this country does not affect Black people. You cannot say the ICE raids or immigration, because there are Black people, contrary to popular belief, there are Black people who are who migrate here and who are undocumented. It is not birthright citizenship, because as we know, birthright citizenship derives from the Reconstruction Amendments. That is to say, Black people got citizenship, however tenuous, from these Reconstruction Amendments. So do you think that if they overturn birthright citizenship, that they're not going to come for niggas first? Excuse me. Our wonderful Black people first? Like, we have to be serious. Like, we have to be sober in our analysis. We have to be clear. Our citizenship is always going to be tenuous, second class, contested, and reversible at best. And so there is no point at which we can tap out. Now, there's something to be said about building coalitions. There's something to be said about being clear about the responsibility of everybody to struggle, because racism is something from which Black people suffer, but it's a white people problem. It's a societal problem, right? So everybody has to be struggling. Like, but there is no point at which self-care means tapping out, means disengagement. This is not to say that we all we don't drop out sometimes, right? We don't go missing and we don't regroup, but we should always be interrogating that, right? We should be like, that should make us uncomfortable, right?
But it also should be a tapping out, a strategic tapping out, in order to preserve your ability to continue to do other things, not just the it's white people's turn kind of tapping out. Because those are not necessarily linked, right? Like, yes, that we've talked about this many times. Yes, there's a real history of people who were actually engaged in struggle, like doing things like not eating and not sleeping and literally dying because of the ways that they were giving to movements. That is not where the vast majority of people are right now. I'm not going to say no one, but that is not where the vast majority of people are right now. And so this idea, there's also a difference between saying today I'm not going to scroll the news versus making a public declaration for people to opt out of information. Like, those are two qualitatively different things. Like, I just need a little bit of a reprieve for my own sanity for the moment versus I need to rope everyone into opting out. Those are strategically very different things.
100%. And for all, I just feel like we talk out both sides of our mouths, because then there's like the dumbass shit, like, I am not my ancestors, you could get these hands. So are motherfuckers getting the hands or not? Are you resting? Or are you throwing these hands? Because to throw them hands, you got to be in these streets. And of course, we know that our ancestors threw all of the things. Like, just as we are a multifaceted, varied people, our ancestors are as well. But I really think so. Anyway, so Black August, right? Black August is a time to recommit to our responsibility, like right, wrong, or indifferent. It is tiring. It is taxing. It is, the world is dehumanizing, but like, that is precisely why we have to continue to fight. We have to continue to try to build not only a culture, but a sort of an ethic where we're supporting each other. So that even when we're tired, we're not like, so worn down, not only from fighting the white man, but from fighting each other. Right, from all of these other distortions and antagonisms that we also reproduce within our organizations or within the movement itself. He said the ancestors was doing bank expropriation. So what now? People overdrawing their bank accounts
and not paying loans.
Right, not paying loans. Right, yeah.
Okay, so let's read this other one too, just for the sake of continuing this conversation.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So again, the motto behind Black August is to study, fast, train, and fight, right? And so I think Denzel just said something in the comments about training too. So these are all like various aspects of what it is that we're supposed to rededicate ourselves to. And that's the other thing, right? So like other kind of commemorative holidays and things, the notion is not that these are not things that we should be doing all the time, but that there are periods of time where we zero back in, we double down. And because of the particular history of August, Black August being tied to these imprisoned rebellions, and a reminder of what our formerly enslaved ancestors, and I say that enslaved in chains, but also enslaved in prisons, decided to do when they were facing these acute circumstances. So again, this is the piece by Joe Tachi. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Published from the Liberation School. So in August 1619, enslaved Africans touched foot in the first permanent English settlement in what is now the United States. The centuries witnessed the development of a racial system more violent, extractive, and deeply entrenched than any other in human history. Yet where there is oppression, there is resistance. Since 1619, Black radicals and revolutionaries have taken bold collective action in pursuit of their freedom, threatening the fragile foundations of exploitation upon which the United States is built. These heroic struggles have won tremendous victories, but they have also produced martyrs, heroes who have been imprisoned and killed because of their efforts to transform society. Black August is honored every year to commemorate the fallen freedom fighters of the Black liberation movement, to call for the release of political prisoners in the United States, to condemn the oppressive conditions of U.S. prisons, and to emphasize the continued importance of the Black liberation struggles. Observers of Black August commit to higher levels of discipline throughout the month. This can include fasting from food and drink, frequent physical exercise and political study, and engagement in political struggle. In short, the principles of Black August are study, fast, train, fight.
George Jackson and the origins of Black August. George Jackson was a field marshal of the Black Panther Party while he was incarcerated in San Quentin Prison in California. Jackson was an influential revolutionary, and his assassination at the hands of a San Quentin prison guard was one of the primary catalysts for the inception of Black August. A 19-year-old convicted of armed robbery in 1961, George Jackson was sentenced to a prison term of 1 year to life, meaning prison administrators had complete and arbitrary control over the length of his sentence. He never lived outside of a prison again, spending the next 11 years locked up, 7.5 years of those in solitary confinement. In those 11 years, despite living in an environment of extreme racism, repression, and state control, George Jackson's political fire was ignited, and he became an inspiration to other revolutionaries of his generation. Jackson was first exposed to radical politics by fellow inmate W.L. Nolan. With Nolan's guidance, Jackson studied the works of many revolutionaries, including Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, Mao Zedong, and Frantz Fanon. Nolan, Jackson, and other prisoners dedicated themselves to raising political consciousness among the prisoners and to organizing their peers in the California prison system. They led study sessions on radical philosophy and convened groups like the Third World Coalition and started the San Quentin prison chapter of the Black Panther Party. Jackson even published 2 widely read books while incarcerated, Soledad Brother and Blood in My Eye.
Unfortunately, if predictably, these radical organizers soon found themselves in the crosshairs of the California prison establishment. In 1970, W.L. Nolan, who had been transferred to Soledad Prison and planned to file a lawsuit against his superintendent, was assassinated by a prison guard. Days later, George Jackson, also now in Soledad Prison, and fellow radical prisoners Fleta Drumgo and John Clutchett were accused of killing a different prison guard in retaliation for Nolan's death. The 3 were put on trial and became known as the Soledad Brothers. That year, when it was clear that George Jackson would likely never be released from prison, his 17-year-old brother, Jonathan Jackson, staged an armed attack on the Marin County Courthouse to demand the Soledad Brothers' immediate release. Jonathan Jackson enlisted the help of 3 additional prisoners, James McLean, William Christmas, and Russell McGee, during the offensive. Jonathan Jackson, McLean, and Christmas were all killed, while McGee was shot and rearrested. Russell McGee was, now 80 years old, is currently one of the longest held political prisoners in the world. On August 21st, 1971, just over a year after the courthouse incident, a prison guard assassinated George Jackson. The facts regarding his death are disputed. Prison authorities allege that Jackson smuggled a gun into the prison and was killed while attempting to escape. On the other hand, literary giant James Baldwin wrote, quote, "No Black person will ever believe that George Jackson died the way they tell us he did."
While the particular circumstances of Jackson's death will likely forever remain contested, 2 facts are clear. His death was untimely, was untimely a political assassination, and his revolutionary imprint can't be extinguished. Through the efforts and sacrifice of George and Jonathan Jackson, Nolan McLean, Christmas McGee, and countless other revolutionaries, the 1970s became a decade of widespread organizing and political struggle within prisons. Prisoners demanded an end to racist and violent treatment at the hands of prison guards, better living conditions, and increased access to education and adequate medical care. Tactics in these campaigns included lawsuits, strikes, and mass rebellions. The most notable example may be the Attica Prison Rebellion, which occurred in New York State just weeks after George Jackson was murdered. In protest of the dehumanizing conditions they were subjected to, about 1,500 Attica prison inmates released a manifesto with their demands and seized control of the prison for 4 days, beginning on September 9, 1971. Under orders from Governor Nelson Rockefeller, law enforcement authorities stormed Attica on September 12th and killed at least 29 incarcerated individuals. None of the prisoners had guns. This is the context out of which Black August was born in 1979. It was first celebrated in California's San Quentin prison, where George Jackson, W.L. Nolan, James McLean, William Christmas, and Ruchell McGee were all held. The first Black August commemorated the previous decade of courageous prison struggle, as well as the centuries of Black resistance that preceded and accompanied it.
Political prisoners in the prison struggle. Observers of Black August call for the immediate release of all political prisoners in the United States. That the U.S. government even holds political prisoners is a fact they attempt to obscure and deny. In reality, dozens of radicals from organizations such as the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, the American Indian Movement, and MOVE have been in prison for decades as a result of their political activity. As Angela Davis, who was at one time the most high-profile political prisoner in the U.S., explains, there is a distinct and qualitative difference between one breaking a law for one's own individual self-interest and violating it in the interest of a class of people whose oppression is expressed either directly or indirectly through that particular law. The former might be called criminal, though in many instances he is a victim, but the latter, as a reformist or revolutionary, is interested in universal social change. Captured, he or she is a political prisoner. In this country, however, where the special category of political prisoners is not officially acknowledged, the political prisoner inevitably stands trial for a specific criminal offense, not for a political act. In all instances, however, the political prisoner has violated the unwritten law which prohibits disturbances and upheavals in the status quo of exploitation and racism.
Prisons in the United States are a form of social control which serve to maintain the status quo of oppression. Over the last few decades, prisons have become an increasingly important tool for the U.S. ruling class. Prisons not only quarantine revolutionaries, but also those segments of the population who have been increasingly expendable to the capitalist system as globalized production, deindustrialization, and technological automation decrease the overall need for labor power. These shifts, which began in earnest in the 1970s, have hit Black, Latino, and Indigenous communities the hardest, as exemplified by the sky-high unemployment and incarceration rates those communities face. These groups are also historically the most prone to rebellion. Angela Davis noted in 1971 that as a result of these trends, prisoners, especially Blacks, Chicanos, and Puerto Ricans, are increasingly advancing the proposition that they are political prisoners. They contend that they are political prisoners in the sense that they are largely the victims of an oppressive political economic order. Though that definition of political prisoner is unorthodox, it illustrates the political and economic nature of criminalization. This is why observers of Black August connect the fight to free revolutionary political prisoners to the broader struggle against U.S. prisons. Mass incarceration is a symptom of the system that political prisoners have dedicated their lives toward fighting. As increasing numbers of the U.S. working class are lumpenized or pushed out of the formal economy and stable employment, the potential significance of political struggle among the unemployed and incarcerated increases. George Jackson wrote in Blood in My Eye that prisoners must be reached and made to understand that they are victims of social injustice. This is my task, working from within. The sheer number of the prisoner class and the terms of their existence make them a mighty reservoir of revolutionary potential. George Jackson's own journey is a perfect example of that revolutionary potential. Jackson didn't arrive in prison a ready-made revolutionary. He had a history of petty crime and was apolitical during his first years in prison. He would have been dismissed by many people in our society as a thug. But comrades who knew that he held the potential inherent in every human being found him and took him in. They helped him understand his personal experiences within the context of capitalism and white supremacy. In turn, George Jackson dedicated his life to doing the same for other incarcerated individuals.
Black August today. August, more than any other month, has historically carried the weight of the Black liberation struggle. Of course, enslaved Africans were first brought to British North America in August 1619. Just over 200 years later, in August 1831, Nat Turner led the most well-known rebellion of enslaved people in U.S. history. This historical significance carried into the 21st century when both the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom and the Watts Rebellions, an explosive uprising against racist policing in Los Angeles, occurred in August during the 1960s. Even today, the month remains significant in the struggle. John Crawford, Michael Brown, and Corinne Gaines were three Black Americans who were murdered in high profile cases of police brutality. Crawford and Brown in August 2014 and Gaines in August 2016. Their deaths have been part of the impetus for a revived national movement against police brutality. Finally, on August 21st, 2018, the 47-year anniversary of George Jackson's death, thousands of U.S. prisoners launched a national prison strike. They engaged in work stoppages, hunger strikes, and other forms of protests. The strike lasted until September 9th, 47 years after the Attica prison uprising began. Like the Attica prisoners, the 2018 prison strike organizers put forth a comprehensive list of demands that expose the oppression inherent to the U.S. prison system and laid out a framework to improve their conditions. Each of these historical and contemporary events reveals a truth that the Black radical tradition has always recognized. There can be no freedom for the masses of Black people within the white supremacist capitalist system. The fight for liberation is just that, a fight. Since its inception in San Quentin, Black August has been an indispensable part of that fight. In the current political moment, when some misleaders would have us bury the radical nature of Black resistance and instead prop up reformist politics that glorify celebrity, wealth, and assimilation into the capitalist system, Black August is as important as ever. It connects Black people to our history and serves as a reminder that our liberation doesn't lie in the hands of Black billionaires, Black police officers, or Black Democratic Party officials. Those Black faces in high places simply place a friendly face on the system that oppresses the masses of Black people in the United States and around the world, often distorting symbols of Black resistance along the way. Black liberation lies, as it always has, in the hands of the conscious and organized masses. Study, train, fight, and in the words of George Jackson, discover your humanity and your love of revolution.
Woohoo! All right, so those are our Black August readings, and just in time, our esteemed guest, comrade, our model of how we should be fighting the system has arrived, and that is our dear Jackie Lukman, who, if y'all don't know, you've been under a rock. Thanks, Jackie, for coming on.
Wait, I got stuck on our model for. I'm like, who the hell is she talking about?
You always do that. Every time you come on and we introduce, you always have that reaction.
You always
follow me at your peril.
Listen, follow you to the peril of the imperialist class, okay?
I mean, ain't no telling where we might end up. We might end up at a metal show. We might end up at a ring shout. We might end up in Bible study. You know, we might end up watching horror movies with Snacks and the dog. You don't know. You be prepared. Somebody's got to be the getaway driver. Somebody.
But a model is not a savior. A model is just like, if you don't know where to begin, if you start from Jackie's sort of praxis, that's as good as any place to start.
Because we're all fallible, and so the point is never to identify someone as the person that this is everything this person does. I'll do, like you said, Sharice. It's a place to start, and you have your own right to say this thing is for me, and this thing is I don't know about this.
Yeah, I got a lot. I don't know about it going on right now.
Listen, so Jackie, we wanted to have you on because you recently submitted a piece to the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective that is wonderful, and that offers a sort of a broader analysis of what the current occupation of DC. Because as these, misleaders will do, they'll talk about Trump's occupation and make it reducible to this current administration, as if there have not been so many so much structural violence that leads up to this point, right? And so you started that piece giving your own particular experience in DC as a lens into understanding the occupation. So can you talk a little bit more about that, like your experience in DC and the other forms of violence that really resonate with this moment?
Yeah, it's weird how you're just growing up, you're just being a kid, and you don't realize that you are living through history, right? Right. We all are. But we observe these like pivotal phenomenon in our communities and our homes and our families and our, where we live, and we don't understand their context or their importance when they're happening. But the impacts of them happening are so intense that the incident stays with you, and it becomes, if you are curious like me, because I have never been like, oh well, that's why they said it happened, okay, that's good enough for me. I'm Mamie. I am Mamie Malone's daughter. And she was never oh, okay, what you tell me, I'll just believe you. Nope. Her whole thing was, if your lips are moving, first of all, if I have to ask you, that's a problem. Because if we have any kind of relationship, I shouldn't have to be waiting for an answer to, but then I'm not just going to believe the official narrative. And what I grew up with over here in Southeast DC, because I still live in Southeast DC, still live in the hood, probably will never live anywhere but the hood every time I have a choice, because I love living around my people. We're amazing. We're lovely and beautiful, and we know how to make the best out of the worst situations, right? And we've done that here in DC. Like when I was in high school, St. Elizabeth's was always here. St. Elizabeth's is the oldest federally funded mental institution. Well, it's not federally funded anymore, but the oldest federal mental institution in the country. And we all know what it was. Most of us kids knew people who actually checked themselves into St. Elizabeth's because they had basically a free drug treatment program. And a lot, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but many of our elders had to deal with the problems from the empire left over from the Vietnam era. Heroin addiction was a big part of that. So we knew a lot of people. I knew several people in my own family who were clean because they were able to walk into St. Elizabeth's and say, I need to get this monkey off my back. Please sign me up for your program. And they did, because it was federally funded. So it was subsidized, right? But even though we did not have this like negative view of St. Elizabeth's and people who have had to use their services, when all of a sudden the people who were in St. Elizabeth's were suddenly, like, it was literally one day you're in the neighborhood, everything's fine, everything's like it always has been when you were a little kid, and the next day all of a sudden there are more people on the street than you've ever seen, and you realize they have problems. And then you make the connection as a kid in high school. Oh my gosh, I think these are the people who were in St. Elizabeth's. And you don't know why it happens because you don't know anything about, politics and policy at the time. But you do remember that at one point, St. Elizabeth's was a safe haven for people who needed help. And they were getting help. It might not have been the best kind of help, mental health in that time not being as advanced, I guess, as it is today. So there are plenty of arguments that can be made about the quality of help that people were able to get in these publicly funded mental institutions. But for kids like me growing up in Southeast DC, where the neighborhood I grew up in was full of poor people, but we kids were having such a good time, we didn't know we were poor. We were just kids growing up in a great neighborhood, and all of a sudden that that safety of a neighborhood for children is immediately taken away because this population of vulnerable people now have nowhere to go. They have no help, they have no services, nobody is looking out for them because St. Elizabeth's had to release people that were not violent threats to the public or themselves because the federal government under Ronald Reagan cut the funding for federal mental health institutions across the country. So I didn't know at the time that I was living through what was the beginning, I guess, of the modern homeless crisis that we have in DC. I did not know that's what I was seeing, but it was. But I also didn't know that it was connected to the crack epidemic and how the crack epidemic happened, the government's complicity in it. But it was also related to, at the very same time, the elimination of other federal programs that provided a measure of, I won't say equality because it wasn't that, but some of these programs like the Summer Youth Employment Program, which was a part of a big federal program that was signed into law by Richard Nixon, of all people, that provided federally subsidized jobs and training for marginalized folks across the country. Reagan got rid of all of that. Summer youth employment programs, that was a big deal here in DC. Everybody I know, everybody had a job through summer youth. And we loved that stuff because we got to make our own money. We're kids. We get to make our own money, and it was more money than we would have been able to make at McDonald's, right? But it was also providing us with almost an immediate pathway from high school to full employment. If we did, if the people that we had these summer jobs with wanted us back, and a lot of people did. So, and then I didn't realize that this was a national program. So when I met Abdus, and I found out that he was in the same program, then I kind of started to put two and two together. Like, wait a minute. What happened to our neighborhood is the same thing that happened to all of these other neighborhoods across the country for the exact same reasons. The same policies did the same things in Camden, New Jersey, in New York City, in Baltimore, Maryland, in LA that happened here in DC. And what I didn't know then, as I was kind of reminiscing and trying to get my timeline straight and doing the reading and finding out, the details behind some of these pieces of legislation that eliminated these programs, the defunding of federal mental health institutions, the elimination of the CETA program that included the summer jobs, and Reagan's first crime bill that I think was the first federal legislation that introduced the sentencing disparities. All of those things, with the exception of Reagan's crime bill, those other things happened before crack hit the streets. So that by the time crack happened, our communities were already completely destabilized. Because now you've got all of the small businesses over here in Southeast DC on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, because of the mentally unstable people who were no longer getting any kind of treatment or care. Well, they're not just going to voluntarily starve, are they? I mean, who is? So they have to feed themselves. If their families did not have a way to take care of them or another facility to send them to, and there were no other public facilities, these folks were literally just left to fend for themselves on the streets. So yes, they started stealing from these businesses. They started stealing from the Safeway. They started, showing up at the McDonald's where all the senior citizens used to hang out at, and causing problems there because they needed medication. But St. Elizabeth's didn't have the money anymore to provide it for them or to take care of them. So then when crack hit the streets, so you've got these people who need help, who are not getting it. They're committing crimes that the media and the politicians are blaming on the youth. This demonization of Black youth in these poor communities, oh, this stuff started. This is not new. So, when the Safeway starts experiencing high shoplifting losses, right? When the police are having to be called to escort people out of the McDonald's, when the other small businesses in the neighborhood were starting to get, having a problem with shoplifting, it all gets blamed on the neighborhood. It all gets blamed on the kids. And this was before crack, right? And then eventually these businesses start closing because they're now having to deal with these heavy losses, right? And then crack happens. So now on top of that existing situation, now you've got a very cheap, very addictive drug on the streets. $5 will get you high. So these people start to medicate, they start to self-medicate, right? So you literally have the perfect storm. And I see somebody in the chat saying that I'm describing the New York City neighborhood they grew up in, except for this is how the destabilization of our communities across this country, African people, working class and poor Africans, and Chicano Mexican immigrant communities. So by the time crack happened, y'all, we were already hamstrung by the economic policies, excuse me, that Reagan passed that destabilized our communities. These policies didn't make us rich. They didn't make us comfortable. They did provide a little bit of a net to keep us from falling all the way through the cracks of economic degradation. And of course, when these policies were taken away, that's exactly what happened. Unemployment went up. Homelessness became an issue. And then on top of that, you have crack. And the response to crack was, despite what we asked for repeatedly, we asked for the return of those programs. We asked for the re-implementation of in-school programming that had already been dwindled away. Music left, drama left, arts classes left. The after-school programs come up. We asked for those things. We asked for summer jobs back. We asked for drug treatment back. We asked for these things that were taken from us. And what we were given were the police. We were given more police. We were given more and more police. They were given more money. They were given a mandate that we and our children are amoral and they need to be under control, because we can't let that violence and that amorality bleed into the rest of society. So their job was really to contain us in any way they could, and that meant mass incarceration. So, excuse me, there was no way, looking back on the policies and the decisions that were made and why they were made, and realizing that as much as we want to blame Republicans for setting this in motion with Reagan's policies in particular, we all know that Democrats have had plenty of opportunities to fix any of that, any and all of it. I attended these meetings, and I was barely out of high school then. And I'm attending these meetings with my mama, and with both of us sitting there mad, the whole neighborhood of people mad, because we realize we know what we need. We know how our communities were before these other things were done. We need that stuff back. And instead, we were dismissed and poo-pooed and told we don't know what we need. I mean, one of the stories I tell is, this still fascinates me. And I can't believe how angry it still makes me, y'all. Like, we sat on the corner in my little neighborhood watch group in my old neighborhood on Oakwood Street, not too far from where I live right now. And Oakwood Street is a back street off a side street, off a side street, off the main drag. Like, we literally lived in the apartment building at the end of Oakwood Street. There was no outlet. You couldn't, it was the woods, right? The only way you know that anybody is back there is if you live there, you're invited there by somebody who lives there, or at that time, you were looking for drugs. So in our neighborhood watch group, which was funded by the DC government, by the way, they provided us and that was under Marion Barry, contradictions included. I can talk about them, y'all can't. So, so we're sitting there and we realize that yes, there are some people, there are some Black folks who are obviously from the city who are buying drugs. But we realized that most of the demand for crack was driven not even by most people in DC. Most of the demand where we lived was driven by mostly white folks from Maryland, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania. How do we know? Because they all drove through our neighborhood in their cars. And we are sitting there like, I mean, it was an endless line of white people from 4 or 5 different states. So we decide, well, let's take down their license plate numbers, because I mean, they're committing crimes and they're coming into our neighborhood. We can deal with our kids. Let us do that. But this, no, they need to go. So they need to stop coming here. So we spend, I don't know how many months, and it was 3 of us writing down all these license plate numbers. And we had, I don't have one with me right here, but you know, the black and white composition notebooks. We had like 6 of them. And this was just like 2 months, 3 months when we first started out as, you know, as a neighborhood watch group. We take the couple of the notebooks to the police department, to 7th district, which is the district that is responsible for this area here in DC of the Metropolitan Police Department. And, you know, here I am thinking that we're on a pretty good, have a pretty good relationship with the police chief, because they hosted the meetings. The neighborhood would always show up. We have a pretty good dialogue. Seemed like a good guy, right? I'm a high school kid. What the hell do I know? You know, so I'm and my mom is trying to get me, you know, to be assertive. You know, you're passionate about this. Go talk to him. And I'm like, okay. So I go up to this police chief, white man for 7th district. Don't remember what his name was. But I tell him in my little nervous teenage, you know, I'm with my orange hat patrol in my neighborhood, and, you know, beating around the bush as teenagers do, not getting to the point, all nervous. And, you know, he's like, oh, I see you have something there. What is it? And I'm like, well, this is just one of many notebooks. These are all of the people who are driving through our neighborhood to buy drugs. And I'm like, as you can see, every page is full. And I have checked this notebook. Very few of the license plate numbers like repeat in it. So it's like the whole state of all of these people are coming. This man looked at that notebook and looked at me, and his countenance changed. He was annoyed with me then. You know, at first it was like, oh, cute kid, let's see what she has to say. But then when I'm like, what are y'all going to do about this? Then it became, oh, you little trouble. He didn't say that, but that was definitely the vibe. That was definitely the attitude, because then it became hands, you know, across the chest puffed out, very defensive kind of posture. And his tone of voice changed. It became very authoritarian, and very heavy. And it's like, what do you want us to do with this? And I'm like, what you mean? These are people who have come into our neighborhood who don't live here to do something illegal that's actually harming us. We're not going to do anything with those. What do you expect us to do with that? And this man had an attitude. And I'm like, what the? So I'm unnerved. I am unnerved. And my mother is watching the whole exchange kind of from the side, you know. And as whatever kind of attitude you think I have, please know I didn't steal it. So, and hers was worse. So I see my mom off on the corner, like she's holding on to the desk, literally holding on to the desk, like, please keep me from launching myself at that who is obviously disrespecting my child right now. And I go over to her and I'm obviously crestfallen because I did not expect. And somehow I knew that what this man was telling me was, I don't give a fuck about y'all. I don't care what anybody can come into. So they coming into your neighborhood to buy drugs and what you want me to do about it. But at the same time, see, I've seen the same people, same MPD come into our neighborhood and arrest kids that I went to high school with because they were addicted, right? Or because they may not have had anything to do with the drug game, but they had a beeper and they lived in the hood, right? I've seen them arrest girls who they suspected of being prostitutes because they were out late at night coming from a go-go show, right? But I've also seen them take the children away from girls who, yeah, they did get caught up, and the punishment for their mistake was to label them terrible mothers, take their children away, and then deepen their depression, which drove them right back to the crack pipe or whatever else. So I'm seeing this, man. I'm making this calculus in my head. Like, I have seen these people come into our neighborhood and drag folks that I went to the ROTC ball with, right, off the street for selling, for selling a couple of baggies of crack. But you can't do nothing about these thousands of people who do not live in our neighborhoods. You can't do anything about them. And it's not that you can't, you're telling me you will not. I hate you. I hate you. And I remember telling my mom that night after she just, lets me, she's like, well, what did he say? And I'm, doing the whole, mama, I can't believe. And he said, and why would he say? And that's just wrong. And it's blah, blah, blah. And she just let me go on. And she was like, and now you know what it's like living with white people. Now you understand what it is like having to live in a society where they make the rules because they decide what is a crime and what's not, who's a criminal and who is not. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And my mother did really tell me that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do. They will make you a criminal anytime you get on their nerves. So I'm like, okay, I feel good for hating him because my mama said it was right. But I think that moment was really when I realized that the police are not our friends. They're not on our side. They're not here for us. That the protect and serve, that's bullshit. Like, after that meeting, I knew, and there was nothing anybody could tell me different.
No, I mean, I think, that context, I think, is really important. One, I see people who are resonating with it in the chat, having grown up elsewhere. I personally did not grow up in the city, but having living in Dorchester right now on the edge of a gentrifying hood, Sharice knows I have had, just in the last month, I have been steps away from teenage brawls because they have ended job programs for teenagers in the summer, right? And I also live at a train station where multiple Black substance addicted people spend their entire day sitting basically outside of my house. And it's, a bit of a gauntlet that I have to go through every day, right? So I think that the story you tell us about your own experience of, like, things never being great, but absolutely being better and having a sense of what those federal safety nets, having had those federal safety nets historically, and the fact that they are deteriorating, and now in this particular moment deteriorating even more rapidly, is contributing to what we are seeing, right? And so, like, that historical context is important, but I also then wanted to ask you to talk more about what we are seeing happening on the streets in DC right now, because yes, this gives us context for understanding, why was DC Chocolate City? Like, what types of things were occurring in DC? But now we also see problematically like I have friends of mine, I'm from North Carolina, so I went to college with many people from DC. And so like on social media, I'm seeing many people that I went to college with having these questionable narratives about whether or not it makes sense to have deployed the National Guard in DC at this moment. And like these people are just fucking clueless, right? And so I wanted you to help us both think about historically what DC was and then why it matters, like that DC one is the kind of center of this work right now, in terms of this ramping up of sort of fascist repression that Trump is engaging in, that the government is engaging in. Why does that matter, in terms of what DC is, but also like how are you all as a community, as people on the ground in DC responding to what's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because first of all, this a part of this conversation is about class, and it is absolutely about class antagonism among Black folks. Because yes, DC used to be Chocolate City. We are technically not anymore. DC used to be 70% Black, 70. DC is now 40% Black, 30% white, and then the rest are, how they do the others. It's the, Chicanos, Mexicans, Asians, immigrants, and everybody else who's not either Black or white. But DC started, well, I shouldn't say started. DC used to be a solidly working class city, solidly working class, 70% Black, and we were proud of that. But then there was an imbalance in the way DC residents were treated in regard to jobs in the government, obviously, because when the formerly enslaved started to migrate to DC after the Civil War, all the white senators were like, oh, no, no, they cannot live here. Because remember, the slave owners were still in Congress. Ain't nobody make them leave. Well, so the former Southern slave owners who seceded and fought to keep slavery, they are still in Congress. And now they see the formerly enslaved come into DC, and they're like, no, they cannot have any kind of power. So DC's autonomy at the time was stripped by these congressmen after the Civil War, who did not want this a Black population, this growing population of free Black folks now, to have any kind of political power whatsoever. But then even after a few years later, during Reconstruction, when voting was extended to all residents of DC, they again, when Reconstruction was violently ended, even though there was not mass violence in DC, there was political violence because those rights were taken away at the same time that the Reconstruction governments in the South were violently destroyed. So out of that history, very truncated history that I gave you about DC, we end up with the Home Rule Act of 1973, which gave DC the right to manage its own affairs up to a point, because the part of the Home Rule Act of 1973 that people don't understand, and it's really a part of the Constitution, is that the Home Rule Act did not overturn the constitutional language that says the laws passed in the District of Columbia and the budget of the District of Columbia must be approved by Congress. The Home Rule Act of 1973 did not change that. So DC's laws and how our money is spent are still decided by Congress. They have veto power over everything the city council does. So I argue in my piece that people are calling what is happening now a takeover of DC. And I know people are not going to like this, but I've been asking the question: if we've never had sovereign control over our own affairs, if Congress has always been able to decide whether laws that we pass can stand or how we spend our money, who who is he taking DC over from? Because it's not us. We don't have control over DC. We can elect our mayor. We can elect the city council. We can elect our advisory neighborhood commissioners. That's all great and good. But we can't decide how we spend our money. And increasingly, the leadership of this city has not fought for full autonomy because they've been too busy pandering to the capitalists, the neoliberal class, like this current mayor, who this woman she has given away public housing land, kicked the people out, given away land that the housing development was on to private developers for $1, right? And this is not just one time. She has allowed the developers to do what they want as far as driving gentrification. And in doing that, she imposed youth curfews, and she's imposed a youth curfew during the summer every year for the past few years before Trump won this last election. MPD has been kicking poor and working class Black folks, particularly the youths, behinds over here in Ward 7 and 8 for years. And under Bowser, there hasn't been a police shooting that she has not supported. She has never come out and opposed any police shooting, and there have been a few in this city. And you know, as far as deploying the National Guard, not the first time it was done. As I said, in the late 80s, 1989, George H.W. Bush deployed the National Guard to DC to respond to a crime and drug culture problem. That's what he called it, after he set that 18-year-old up to come to the White House to sell some crack so he could have that little, you know, TV moment. But just like now, drug use and the violence related to the crack epidemic had already been going down by the time George H.W. Bush came into office. Didn't matter. He needed something to galvanize that red meat support. So he created this narrative that DC is overrun with crime. See, we were able to buy a bag of crack right near the White House. Ain't nobody selling no crack near the White House. Nobody. They lured they entrapped an 18-year-old, right? So George H.W. Bush deploys the National Guard, but Marion Barry, the police chief at the time, who I cannot remember that man's name. I think it was Turner. I think it was Maurice Turner. And the chief of the National Guard at the time all came out and did a press conference and said, all right, he's deployed the National Guard. We can't overrule that, but they will not patrol the streets. They do not have authority to arrest. They will not be doing that. That didn't happen this time because Muriel Bowser pretended she fake opposed it. She clutched her pearls. Oh, he's deploying the National Guard. Oh, while she's flying back from Martha's Vineyard on the day that they were deployed, right? Like somebody else couldn't have went and picked up her kid. Sure, they could have. But now what is happening with the National Guard, which is an escalation, and I think this is important for us to understand. I am not making the argument here that what Trump is doing now is not bad, is not dangerous, is not awful. It is. It absolutely is. But we need to understand that it is not a new phenomenon. This is an escalation. And the problem that I have with people who even admit that is they don't talk about what the escalation was from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this history is very, very important. So it's okay, fine. The National Guard was deployed. The issue now is that they have arrest authority. Now They will be armed, right? Now they are patrolling the streets. But as we're seeing as the days go by, even the National Guard is realizing, even these, all these agencies are realizing, oh, okay, there's not really a crime. So now they're like picking up trash. Literally, I saw a video today of of members of the National Guard, like having so little to do that now they're on litter duty. Right. So, and the people that have been arrested, that, you know, because they've made a big deal about those 1,000 arrests that they've made over the past 20 days, none of those arrests were for violent crime. Not one. Not even the white man who threw his Subway sandwich right at the chest of that of the National Guard person. The grand jury refused to indict him, as well as a couple other people that were arrested, I think, in relation to the little 19-year-old Doge employee who made up the lie about him being attacked, because you know that was a lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the difference now between the National Guard deployment today and the National Guard deployment in 1989, 1990. Then the National Guard literally stood on the corner with their gigantic Klieg lights to scare away the drug traffic, what little bit of it there was left. And that's literally all they did. That's all they did.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're helping with checkpoints. You know, they are providing the backup for MPD to do more of what MPD was already doing. That is the key part of this, that even as, yes, what Trump is doing, absolutely an escalation to already repressive, militarized, abusive, violent policing and policies. Most of the arrest activity is still done by MPD. You know, you see the ICE agents still carrying out their BS, but most of the other arrests are actually done by MPD. So far, the National Guard is just kind of standing there waiting for somebody to give them a reason, right? That's basically what that is.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean, however, that this will not escalate even further. Because now that the National Guard will be armed, they weren't armed before, they were not armed in 1989. This brings another dynamic into this, but again, even that dynamic is not unusual. People keep using this word unprecedented. It's not. When you remember the National Guard being deployed onto the streets of cities where uprisings against racist police terrorism happened in the 60s and the 70s. Those people were armed and they were driving tanks down our streets. Do people think those tanks didn't have the ordnance in them? Sure they did. And they were prepared to use them against us. And sometimes they did shoot us. Kent State, Jackson State.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So what is happening now in DC, I think, is an instructive moment about what this thing called democracy is for people who have not lived that history. Right? For people who are younger than me, for these kids in this city right now, this is horrifying for them. They are afraid. They do not feel safe. They don't want to go to school because you got ICE agents posted up outside the schools. They were already nervous about MPD anyway because of the youth curfews that Bowser had imposed that kept them from certain areas of the city and literally criminalized their existence in certain places where the tourists and the rich people are, right? That has always been an issue for youth in this city, where they just felt like there was nothing in this city for them. And politicians and leadership don't care. And whenever they go somewhere where they're not wanted, instead of being given somewhere else to go or something to do, they get arrested. And that has been going on for a long time. So that's the kind of stuff. Oh, the homeless encampment clearings. Bowser and MPD and DPW have been doing those clearing of homeless encampments. Let me not call them clearings. The destruction of homeless encampments. They have taken the same bulldozers, using the same tactics in the exact same way, throwing these people's possessions into these dump trucks, taking their possessions to the dump, and disappearing those people. So this is the foundation of what this escalation was built on. It was already fascist. It was already hateful. It was already antagonism toward the working class and poor in this city, carried out by a Black Democrat woman mayor and many members of the city council who are Democrats and also Black. So what do you get when you escalate an already unjust and fascist system? Well, you get more fascism. I mean, it didn't become fascism when Trump did it. This is the thing that I think is frustrating me so much, is that people understand what fascism is when a particular politician of a particular stripe does it.
Mm-hmm.
But they never want to admit the fascism that liberals have enabled to allow this moment to happen in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Jackie. We have, as always, we learned so much from you. And I love, I am not a trained historian. I like to say that I'm historically nosy, but I think we always try to bring in the sort of historical perspective because, as they say, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And also, I think that helps us develop a more robust political analysis, to know that this is not the first time, and it won't be the last time unless we organize and unless we prevent it from being so. So I wonder, this episode is like about Black August. So I wonder if you had a few remarks about what should we be doing to organize against this? Because Trump has already, this is a testing ground, right? So this, what we might call the policification of the military. So it's not just the militarization of police. It is the increasing use of the military to serve police function, which ostensibly is illegal, right? That this is so it happened a bit in LA. It's happening in DC. And Trump has said he also wants to deploy the National Guard to Chicago and New York. So what should we be doing to organize against this? How can we not only have a proper analysis of what's happening, but what should people in Chicago, everywhere, right? All of these cities, all of these Democrat run, specifically cities with majority or plurality Black people, what should we be doing now?
We should definitely be organizing with the African working class, poor, Pan-Africanist, anti-imperialist organizers in every single one of these cities. And I am specific about those people, those particular people, because we are once again in a moment where you got a bunch of liberals, not all white, but way too many of them, who are coming in, trying to save the Blacks, right? Now I was in a meeting earlier today with a very liberal group. I actually do go to the meetings sometimes just to hear what they have to say, so I'm not lying about these people when I read them the riot act. But yeah, they are really not interested in talking to the people who are most impacted by these issues. Everything is about Trump. The focus is all on Trump, 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 Trump. But these are people who largely don't live in DC, in the meeting I was in today, and they didn't talk to any existing organizers or organizations. All the people they had speaking at their little, coalition building meeting were all white people who identified themselves as progressive or liberal. There were no representatives from any of the Black radical anti-imperialist organizations that exist in the city in that meeting. They did not reach out to any of us. Didn't have to be BAP, but you didn't reach out to PACA. You didn't reach out to MXGM. You didn't reach out to Claudia Jones. You didn't reach out to nobody else. They're in the meeting talking about, we want to have a student walk out at Howard University. Well, we have comrades at Howard University. And they're like, who? Who they is? We don't know who they are. We do not. We have never heard of them. They have not reached out to us. And now that I know that they are raising our name up, now we're not going to join.
But if they ain't got no people, why is that a site of struggle? I don't understand that.
and see, this is why I am telling people now, listen, we must be organized now. If you don't see the importance of organizing now, then I can't. You're no use to any of us. I just really feel like if you don't understand how important it is to not be alone in this fight and to be surrounded by people who have some ideas and some plans and following a blueprint toward a future that is different from this. If you don't get that that's what you need to be doing now, and after we keep telling you that, you can't get out the way. I'm just go ahead, do you get out the way. But I think it is very, very important for us to be very clear and very careful on who we are organizing with. I think we can't just tell people to go be organized, because liberals are organizing too. Indivisible is organizing.
So you against these broad coalitions right now?
I can't issue a blanket hell no. But it's one of those situations where you got to be in the room when the plans are being made with these people, because that is, and at the beginning, you can't walk into these coalitions when they invite you, right? As a Black radical, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, Pan-Africanist, socialist, communist. They know who we are. They don't want to organize with us, but they want our cred. They want to be able to say, oh, we have Black Alliance for Peace on our side, right? So they'll invite our organizations to sign on to their coalition and their event, endorse their event after they've made all the plans, but we've had no input into the purpose, mission, statement, demands. And then
no kings. That was a case in point.
Exactly. Exactly. So then here we are, we're signing on, expected to sign on to and endorse some liberal ass, free Ukraine.
In NATO, hands off NATO.
Right, hands off NATO. Trump needs to go today. And when I am in the meeting and I'm listening to them and everything is Trump, everything is Trump, everything is Trump. And they give me a couple of minutes to speak. And I say, we don't need you to save us. We need you to listen to us. Most of you are not from here. Have you talked to any of the residents in the most affected areas? I suspect that you haven't, because none of them are here. And the only reason I knew about this meeting is because somebody else was sent it and said, hey, maybe let's go check this out. So how are you planning to come to another city and organize this big event for democracy and defending the people, but you haven't talked to the people to ask them, to find out from them, what is it that you need us to do? So for me, broad coalitions are fine. It's just who is in the coalition that we need to know before we sign on to them. And if I'm in a meeting with any organization, I don't care who it is, any organization, and we are fighting to change this system for the liberation of our people, and you gonna tell me we have to make sure that all of our actions are nonviolent, I'm out. I'm out right now. I'm not even gonna take the time to cuss you out, because in 2025, if we got people still talking about we need to make sure that we're nonviolent, nonviolence is best, when the state's greeting, their statement, their answers to your questions, their responses to what you need is violence every day, you're not serious about helping anything. What you want is attention and focus. We don't need saviors. We need soldiers. We need people who are serious about changing this system. Organize with those people. Don't stop organizing with people who are like, well, if we can just get Mom Donnie elected, we can push the Democrats to the left.
Except he already going to the right. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
See.
Well, I think you gave us our marching orders.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you again so much, Jackie, for submitting the piece, which will be out in the next few days on the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective blog, which is called My Pen is My Machete. I'll drop the link in the chat. And thank you for coming on to give us a sense of what's happening and what is to be done. So as always, we're so grateful to have you on.
Thank you so much. And I'm always so glad when you all invite me. And might I say, I feel real dull compared to you two. Because y'all two are just shining over there. Y'all are shining oh my God.
It's just a ring light.
I'm gonna say it's the ring light in the white t-shirt. That's what it
Well,
is.
Revolution will look real good on some people.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
I
you need
just
Denzel to send you one of these. Denzel needs to send you a Middle Tennessee Gun Club shirt. That's
we need to organize a maybe a little BLM women's group outing. Denzel.
Mhm. Yes.
Denzel.
I agree. I concur. Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank y'all so
All
much.
right, thank you. Take care. Be safe.
Y'all too.
Bye-bye. So the last thing, all right. So Layla, you can kind of run point on this. We want to talk about Venezuela and why it's important to have a correct analysis of what political imprisonment is and who our political prisoners are. Because the state will tell you any motherfucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, Sharice and I were having a conversation, one about why the fuck are there warships off the coast of Venezuela right now? But one of the things that's happening in conjunction with why are there warships is that there is this ongoing conversation about the release of U.S. political prisoners. Yes, U.S. citizens who are political prisoners in Venezuela. And so then the State Department has this like erroneous statement that like Venezuela is the country in the world that has the most U.S. What's the right language? The most U.S. citizen political prisoners. So let's just assume that that's true. Why might that be true in a place like Venezuela? And so, you know, there's obviously people who are following Venezuela will know that this is similar to the story that Jackie was telling us about DC. What's happening in Venezuela right now is not something new. It is not something that is particularly related to Maduro as the president. It is an intensification, a ramping up of what has been occurring in Venezuela ever since Chavez assumed power in 98 and decided to nationalize the oil resources. In particular, the nationalizing of the oil resources is one of the most, I think, important factors in this, right? So obviously, yes, there is this kind of ongoing conversation about the fact that Venezuela has been leading a charge in the 21st century to push politics in the Western Hemisphere to the left, but we cannot ignore the fact that Venezuela having one of the world's largest oil reserves is a major contributing factor to why Venezuela is such a critical geopolitical and economic adversary of the U.S., right? And so when we talk about political prisoners that are being released in Venezuela that are U.S. based, the questions that we have to ask is, what are the terms that made them political prisoners? More often than not, the names of so like in the piece that we just shared, the names of the political prisoners that were released are people who are tied to opposition forces in Venezuela. And so
when we're Bay of Pigs, it's very, I said it's giving Bay of Pigs. It's very like Gusano. And these are people who tried to overthrow the government. Many of the Venezuela political prisoners are what's the man's name that they declared president?
Guaido.
Yeah, so it's those type of supporters. So people who actually were trying to overthrow the government by force or violence, these are the political prisoners, right? Exactly. Compare that to the political prisoners in the United States, who are people who are fighting for liberation, right? Who are people who have been specifically targeted and criminalized because of a sense of justice. And this is why we really have to be critical when we think about like abolition, for example, right? We really have to be mindful of what's happening in different societies, and we really have to be critical of conflating all of these different historical and material realities, and being very, very clear on what we mean by political prisoners, right? Yes. Being very, very clear about when we are inadvertently or intentionally parroting U.S. imperialist propaganda. It's like, if we know that the U.S. is lies about Black people, lies about migrants, lies about Cuba, lies about everything else, why would they be telling the truth about Venezuela? Exactly. Right? Why would they be telling the truth about Iran? Why would they be telling the truth about North Korea? right? So we have to ask ourselves these questions. And yes, there's the statement like even a broken clock is wrong twice a day. Well, is right twice a day. Even a broken clock. These are not those cases, right? Because the U.S. has a vested interest in distortion, a vested interest in mystification and obfuscation, and so part of what we want to think, or part of like why we're lifting up Venezuela at this moment, is because if we don't have a counter narrative, you will believe what the U.S. says a political prisoner is.
Yep.
Right? You will believe what the U.S. says about socialism or communism or even armed struggle, what they say about Palestinians, about what's happening in Gaza. All of these things are interconnected, right? And a political prisoner in Gaza, a political prisoner in the United States is not comparable to people who are incarcerated in Venezuela because they're trying to undermine a socialist revolution. We cannot understand these things as the same. And if we don't have something like Black August, if we don't commit ourselves to the tenets of Black August, then we are apt to succumb to like this misinformation and disinformation.
And I mean, this is a point that you already made, but I'm thinking about Trump's decision to unleash the National Guard on DC is not unlinked to his decision to put warships off the coast of Venezuela, right? This is an attempt to create a particular kind of show of force. And again, and the narrative is that it's about narco trafficking, which it never has been. But even the other question about like, even if there is rampant narco trafficking that's happening from Venezuela, Colombia to the US, there's also more questions that have to be asked about who is facilitating that trade. And this is the same. And I think, again, back to Jackie's points about DC, it is not, we are not the people who were importing drugs into our communities. Who was importing those drugs? And then there's people who are importing the drugs, and then there's the police officers who are putting the drugs on the streets among our people. And so as we are watching this intensification and this ramping up of the aggression against Venezuela, we need to be very careful about these narratives about, you know, Maduro not doing whatever he needs to be doing for his people. I've never made the argument that Maduro was a perfect president, but his ability to provide for his citizens is also severely diminished as they play with oil markets, with the price of oil per gallon, and because the price of oil per gallon is how social programs have been propped up in Venezuela, not just under Maduro, not even just under Chavez. That was the case even under the U.S. puppet leaders in Venezuela as well. It's just that they've ramped it up, you know, in this moment. And so again, Venezuela is a critical point. It's a critical place that we need to watch in terms of these geopolitical wars, and also Venezuela's relationship to China. Because Venezuela's willingness and to sell crude oil to China is very important to China's rise, to China's economic, technological rise. And that, again, is another part of the trifecta that is a threat to the U.S. government, right? And so really paying attention to what is happening in Venezuela, and again, in the context of this conversation about political prisoners, but also in terms of its geopolitical importance, I think it's something that we wanted to uplift again for the sake of this conversation.
And it's sort of the U.S. sending warships is a reaction to the ways that sanctions have not been able to overthrow Maduro. Exactly. It has caused unimaginable suffering to the Venezuelan people, which is why there has been such an uptick in Venezuelan migration to the United States, right? Which then, of course, leads to the denigration of those Venezuelan migrants in the United States, lest we forget the Venezuelan gang hoax. But the show of force is a response to the fact that the U.S. economic warfare is not being as effective as it wants it to be. If you look at Russia, for example, it was not able to cripple Russia. It has had a very detrimental effect on Venezuela, but it has not resulted in the regime change that they're pushing for. And so we need to understand that as part of our reality as well. That, as you know, they call it the imperial boomerang. As the U.S. is less and less able to control the population and resistance through soft power, this is where we get, you know, military occupation. and the increased presence of military performing police functions, even as we see the police being militarized. So it's all connected.
It is. And so before we're gonna wrap it up soon, but before we get out, this is a conversation Sharice and I were having about Black August. So yes, as we read that piece, Black August is very much rooted in the particular sort of U.S. prison industrial complex and Black liberation struggles in the territorial United States of America. But I also think that if we think about the refrain or the motto of Black August, which is to study, fight, train, an extension of that,
Fast.
Yeah, and fast. An extension of that study is to also be aware of the international nature of Black liberation struggles. And so we did want to lift up a few different things that also have occurred in August in the course of history, and some things that weren't mentioned even in the US, right? So like another thing that occurred in August was Emmett Till's murder, right? And so if we think about Emmett Till's murder as a major sort of jumping off point for a lot of Black organizing Black organizing and Black freedom struggles in the U.S. I think that's another important critical thing. But again, there are other dates, right? So in 1791, the Bois Quémant, which was the ceremony that sort of initiated the Haitian Revolution, also took place in August. We have important sort of birth dates and death dates. So W.B. Du Bois dies in 1963 in August. Marcus Garvey is born in 1887 in August. James Baldwin is born in 1924 in August. Fred Hampton is also born in 1948. There were also enslaved rebellions that took place. The Charlestown Maroons defended themselves against the British here in South Carolina in 1768. There was the Gabriel Prosser's rebellion that was thwarted in Virginia in 1800. And also in 1850, Frederick Douglass actually chaired the Fugitive Slave Law Convention in the US. But then also in terms of like African independence struggles, Benin, Niger, the Central African Republic, and the Republic of Congo all gained their independence from France in August of 1960. Different dates, but in August of 1960. And so in the spirit of our Pan-Africanist and internationalist understandings of the world, we also just wanted to bring in that as much as Black August is a tradition that is rooted in the particular experiences of Black people in the territorial US, as we are engaged in this in our commitment to study, we need to also be very much aware of how these struggles are resonating across the world and how they're in conversation with one another.
Period. So thanks y'all for hanging in with us for 2 hours for tapping into this special episode on Black August. We'll have another pop-up in September before we start season 4 in October. So shout out to y'all.
We'll do our best to have our pop-up at the same time slot, but stay tuned for details about actually the logistics of season 4.
And if there's something, email us. What is it? lifestudyrevolution@gmail.com. If there's something in particular you want us to talk about, think through, cover, somebody you want us to talk to for that pop-up, let us know.
Thank y'all.
Right, bye, y'all. Thank you. All right.